For 2 excruciating weeks, Specialist Maya Rostova was a ghost, a phantom of failure haunting the unforgiving grounds of the Tier 1 selection course. Every action, every drill, every single moment under the blistering desert sun was a testament to her spectacular incompetence. On the firing range, her shots kissed the dirt a foot wide of their targets, her groupings a pathetic spray of missed opportunities. Simple weapon reloads, a task that should be muscle memory for any soldier, became a clumsy, fumbling ballet of dropped magazines and jammed slides. Her fellow candidates, men carved from granite and forged in the crucible of combat, watched with a mixture of pity and contempt. The whispers followed her like a shadow. How did she even get here? Is she a plant? A diversity hire to fill a quota? The obstacle course, a brutal gauntlet designed to break the strongest of men, shattered her spirit in a way that was almost theatrical. She would move through the initial challenges with a strange, detached grace, her movements economical but slow. Then came the flashbang simulator. The deafening crack and blinding white light would detonate, and just like that, Maya Rostova would switch off. She'd freeze mid-stride, her body locked, her eyes vacant and staring at a point somewhere beyond the horizon. It was as if her soul had momentarily fled her body, leaving behind an empty vessel. Only the sharp, angry bark of an instructor's voice could reboot her system, pulling her back to the humiliating reality of her failure. The instructors, hardened veterans who had seen it all, were at the end of their rope. Their patience, already worn thin by the relentless pressure of the course, had evaporated. One of them, Master Sergeant Thorne, a man whose face was a roadmap of past wars, watched her with a grim certainty. The paperwork for her dismissal was on his desk, the ink practically drying. She had one more chance, one final evaluation run, one more failure, and Specialist Rostova would be a ghost for good, a forgotten footnote in the annals of a course that only remembers its victors. The day Maya Rostova arrived, she didn't make an entrance, she simply materialized. She stepped off the dusty transport bus that had ferried the candidates from the main base, a solitary figure in a sea of boisterous, muscle-bound hopefuls. Dressed in standard-issue fatigues that seemed a size too big for her wiry frame, with her raven-black hair pulled back in a severe functional bun, she was utterly unremarkable. She was a study in grays and browns, designed to blend in, to be overlooked. But if you looked closer, if you dared to meet her gaze, you'd see the storm brewing in her eyes. They were sharp, intelligent, and perpetually in motion, scanning, assessing, cataloging everything and everyone around her. They were the eyes of a predator, strangely at odds with the prey she appeared to be. There was a subtle tremor in her left hand, a faint, almost imperceptible vibration that she masked by keeping it tucked into a pocket or gripping a strap on her gear. It was a tell, a tiny crack in her otherwise placid facade. She moved with a deliberate, measured gait, each step placed with precision, as if she were constantly aware of the ground beneath her feet. In the cavernous, echoing mess hall, the air thick with the smell of stale coffee and testosterone, she became an island. She chose a small table in the corner, one that gave her a clear line of sight to every entrance and exit, and ate her meal in silence. Her focus was entirely on the task at hand, her movements efficient and devoid of any wasted energy. Across the hall, the self-appointed kings of this small kingdom held court. Sergeant Rex A-Train Armstrong, a mountain of a man with a booming voice and the cocksure swagger of a high school quarterback, sat with his loyal acolytes, Corporal Jester Sims and PFC Grizz O'Connell. Armstrong's eyes, small and hard, found Maya. A smirk played on his lips. He leaned in and muttered something to his crew. A moment later, a wave of derisive laughter rolled across the room, the first of many verbal volleys aimed directly at her. Maya didn't flinch. She simply finished her meal, her expression unreadable, and left the mess hall, the sound of their laughter following her out into the oppressive heat. The days that followed were a masterclass in public humiliation. Each training exercise became a new stage for Maya to demonstrate her profound lack of skill. On the rifle range, under the unforgiving glare of the sun, Her performance was abysmal. While other candidates punched tight, clean groups in the center mass of their targets, Maya's rounds were wild, erratic, a testament to someone who seemed to have never held a weapon before. The instructors would scream, their voices raw with frustration. "Control your breathing, Rostova. Squeeze the trigger, don't jerk it." But nothing changed. Her reloads were even worse. Under the pressure of the shot timer, her fingers would turn to clumsy sausages. She'd drop a full magazine into the dust, struggle to seat the new one, her movements a frantic, uncoordinated mess. Armstrong and his crew would be on the firing line next to her, their laughter barely concealed. "Hey, tourist," A-Train would call out, his voice dripping with condescension. "You need a hand with that. Maybe we can get you a water pistol to start with." The kill house, a labyrinth of rooms and corridors designed to simulate close-quarters battle, was a theater of disaster. Here, hesitation is death. And Maya hesitated at every threshold. Her angles were wrong, exposing her to unseen threats. Her timing was a fatal flaw, resulting in the deaths of simulated hostages and teammates alike. During one run, she paused for a fraction of a second too long before entering a room, and the instructor's whistle blew, signaling that a hostage had been executed. Grizz O'Connell, who had been on her team, slammed his training rifle against the plywood wall in disgust. "Broken," he muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. The girl is just plain broken. But it was the obstacle course where her inadequacy was most starkly displayed. She would navigate the initial hurdles, the wall climbs, the rope swings, the barbed wire crawls, with a strange, fluid economy of motion that hinted at a deep well of physical capability. But it was always a prelude to the same inevitable failure. The flashbang simulator would explode, a violent eruption of sound and light, and Maya would simply cease to function. She would freeze, her body rigid, her eyes wide and unfocused, lost in some internal landscape no one else could see. The other candidates would thunder past her, their faces a mixture of annoyance and grim satisfaction. It was a confirmation of what they already believed. She didn't belong here. She was a liability, a piece of broken gear that needed to be discarded. Master Sergeant Thorne had been an instructor at this selection course for 15 years. He'd seen the bravest men break and the most arrogant humbled. He had a sixth sense for bullshit, an almost supernatural ability to see through the masks and bravado the candidates wore. And as he watched Specialist Rostova, his finely tuned senses were screaming that something was wrong with the picture. Where the other instructors and candidates saw incompetence, Thorne saw something else entirely, a deliberate, almost chilling level of restraint. He watched her on the range. Her stance was perfect, her grip on the weapon flawless. When she missed, it wasn't the wild miss of an amateur. It was a precise, controlled miss, as if she were intentionally aiming just off target. He observed her in the mess hall. She never sat with her back to a door. Her eyes were never still, constantly scanning the room, assessing the people, mapping the exits. This wasn't the behavior of a nervous recruit. It was the ingrained discipline of a seasoned professional. One night long after lights out, Thorne was making his final rounds when a faint rhythmic sound drew him to the back of the barracks. There, in the pale moonlight, was Maya. She was field stripping her rifle, her movements a blur of practiced surgical precision. She disassembled and reassembled the weapon again and again, her hands moving with a speed and confidence that was utterly absent during the day's training. He watched, hidden in the shadows, as she moved through a series of dry-fire drills, her body flowing through the motions of room clearing with a lethal grace that sent a shiver down his spine. She was a phantom in the dark, a predator practicing her craft. Thorne retreated into the shadows, a deep sense of unease settling in his gut. This wasn't a soldier who couldn't perform. This was a soldier who wouldn't. The freezing on the obstacle course, the fumbled reloads, the missed shots. It was all an act, a performance. But why? Why would someone go to such lengths to fail? The question gnawed at him. He knew one thing for certain. Specialist Maya Rostova was far more than she appeared to be, and the answer to her mystery was a secret she was holding back with a will of iron. The taunts from Armstrong and his crew, which had started as muttered jokes, escalated into a campaign of psychological warfare. Tourist became her official call sign on the training comms. Jester Sims would accidentally trip her during formation runs. Grizz O'Connell made a point of loudly questioning her presence to anyone who would listen, suggesting she'd be more useful, making coffee back at HQ. The constant barrage was designed to break her, to force her to quit. But Maya absorbed it all with a placid indifference that only seemed to fuel their cruelty. The breaking point came during a full-squad urban assault exercise, the most complex and dangerous drill of the course. The objective was to clear a multi-story building and rescue a hostage, all while under simulated fire. Armstrong was the squad leader, and he placed Maya on the entry team, a decision that was both a test and a trap. As the team stacked up outside the first door, ready to breach, Maya was the point man. The signal was given, the charge blew the door off its hinges, and the team was meant to flow into the room like water. But Maya hesitated. For a single fatal second, she paused at the threshold. In a real-world scenario, that second would have been an eternity. The instructor, observing from a catwalk above, blew his whistle. "Point man is dead. Squad mate behind you is dead." Armstrong's face contorted with rage. He shoved past Maya, his massive frame knocking her off balance. "Get to the back, tourist, you're dead weight," he snarled over the comms, his voice a venomous hiss. For the rest of the exercise, Maya was relegated to the rear of the formation, a spectator to the chaos. The team's cohesion, already frayed, completely disintegrated. They moved with the jerky, uncoordinated panic of a team that had lost all faith in itself. The exercise was a catastrophic failure, scrapped by the instructors before they even reached the second floor. In the debriefing that followed, Armstrong laid the blame squarely on Maya. "She's a liability, Master Sergeant," he said, his voice ringing with self-righteous anger as he addressed Thorne. "She doesn't have what it takes. She's going to get good men killed." The other members of the squad, even those who hadn't participated in the bullying, nodded in agreement. Maya stood at the back of the room, her expression unreadable, her silence a damning admission of guilt in the eyes of her peers. The verdict was in, and it was unanimous. Maya Rostova was a failure. Her performance record was a litany of subpar scores and glaring mistakes. 2 weeks of consistent, undeniable incompetence. The machinery of the military had made its decision. The paperwork for her medical discharge, citing failure to adapt to a training environment, was filled out and awaiting a final signature. The rumors had become accepted fact. She was a fluke, a broken soldier who had somehow slipped through the cracks. Master Sergeant Thorne argued against it. He found himself in the uncomfortable position of defending the course's worst-performing candidate. "Sir, I'm telling you, there's more to her than what we're seeing," he pleaded with the course commander. "I've seen her at night. Her fundamentals are flawless. This is deliberate. Something else is going on here." But the commander, a man who dealt in facts and figures, just shook his head. "Thorne, look at the scores. Look at the reports from the other instructors. Look at what happened in the urban assault drill. My hands are tied. We can't afford to keep a soldier who freezes under pressure. She's a danger to herself and to others." The decision was final. Specialist Rostova would be given one last evaluation run in 2 days. A formality, a final box to check before she was sent packing. No one, not even Thorne, held out any hope that she would pass. The story of the quiet, incompetent specialist who washed out of selection was already being written. Her fate appeared to be sealed. The afternoon before her final evaluation, a vehicle appeared on the horizon, a black speck growing larger against the shimmering heat haze of the desert. It was a black government-issue SUV, its tinted windows reflecting the harsh sunlight. It rolled onto the training range with a quiet authority that silenced the usual cacophony of gunfire and shouting. The SUV came to a stop, and the driver's side door opened. Out stepped a woman who commanded attention without saying a word. She was tall and severe, dressed in a perfectly pressed uniform, adorned with the eagle of a full colonel. Her name was Eva Rostova, and she radiated an aura of cold, unyielding authority. Combat ribbons from conflicts most people only read about were neatly arranged on her chest. She wasn't just a high-ranking officer. She was a legend in the intelligence community. She walked directly to Master Sergeant Thorne, her boots making no sound on the dusty ground. "Thorne," she said, her voice calm and clipped, devoid of any preamble. "I'm here to observe Specialist Rostova's final evaluation." Thorne was taken aback. A colonel from a shadowy intelligence agency doesn't just show up to watch a candidate wash out. "Colonel, with all due respect, her scores." Colonel Rostova cut him off with a subtle, almost imperceptible shake of her head. "I'm not interested in her scores," she said, her gaze fixed on the training facility in the distance. "I am, however, interested in her performance tomorrow. Mid-exercise, I will be giving her a trigger phrase over the comms. You will ensure I have a direct line." Thorne stared at her, the pieces of the puzzle beginning to click into place in his mind, forming a picture he wasn't sure he was ready to see. A trigger phrase? It sounded like something out of a spy novel. Before he could ask the question burning on his tongue, the colonel added one final chilling instruction. "And Master Sergeant, for your own safety and the safety of your instructors, I suggest you observe from a distance." The final evaluation began just as everyone expected. Maya moved with the same slow, deliberate, almost sluggish style that had defined her for the past 2 weeks. Over the squad's comms, the groans of her teammates were audible. "Great," Jester Sims muttered. "We're stuck with the tourist on our last run. Fantastic." Armstrong, leading the team, simply ignored her, directing his orders to everyone else as if she wasn't there. They cleared the first building, their performance sloppy but adequate. Maya was a non-entity, a shadow following in their wake. As they stacked up on the door of the second, more complex structure, Thorne watched from the observation tower, a knot of anticipation tightening in his stomach. Colonel Rostova stood beside him, a remote microphone in her hand, her expression as cold and still as a frozen lake. The team breached the door. Gunfire erupted. The sounds of the exercise, shouted commands, simulated explosions, the pop-pop-pop of training rounds filled the air. Then, cutting through the chaos, a new voice entered the comms channel. It was the colonel's. Her voice was calm, clear, and utterly devoid of emotion. "Aria in G minor, begin." For a moment there was nothing. Then, on the monitors displaying the helmet cam feeds, Maya's perspective lurched. It was as if a switch had been flipped deep inside her brain. The hesitant, clumsy soldier vanished, and in her place was something else entirely, something terrifyingly efficient. She surged forward, a blur of motion. She entered the first room low and fast, her rifle up, her eyes scanning. 2 targets popped up. Before they were fully exposed, 2 perfectly placed shots sent them snapping back. Her reload was a single, seamless motion, so fast it was almost impossible to track. She didn't walk. She flowed, moving from cover to cover with a predatory grace that was both beautiful and terrifying to watch. Her angles were perfect, her awareness of the space around her absolute. Her teammates, who had been treating her as dead weight just seconds before, were now struggling to keep up, their own movements suddenly looking clumsy and amateurish in comparison. They stumbled over each other, their minds unable to process the sudden, shocking transformation of the woman they had called tourist. What happened next wasn't a training exercise. It was a symphony of controlled violence. Maya Rostova, or whatever she was now, moved through the building with the lethal precision of a surgeon and the speed of a striking snake. She was the ghost in the machine, a weapon unleashed. She cleared rooms before her teammates had even processed the layout, neutralizing targets with single, precise shots. She anticipated threats, reacted to stimulus before it even fully registered, and moved with an inhuman level of efficiency. The squad, caught in her wake, was simply trying not to get in the way. They didn't just pass the evaluation, they obliterated the course record, a record that had stood for 6 years. They rescued the final hostage and secured the building in a time that the instructors, watching with dropped jaws from the observation tower, initially thought was a malfunction of the timer. In the stunned silence of the debriefing room, the squad stood in a state of shock. Armstrong's face was pale, his usual arrogance replaced by a look of profound confusion and a flicker of fear. Thorne simply stared at Maya, who stood calmly, the tremor in her hand gone, her eyes clear and present. Then Colonel Eva Rostova entered the room, and the final piece of the puzzle fell into place. "Specialist Maya Rostova," she began, her voice filling the silent room, "is a graduate of the classified program known as Project Chimera." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. Chimera operatives are conditioned from a young age. They are trained to be the most lethal and efficient soldiers on the planet. But this conditioning comes with a failsafe, a containment protocol. She looked directly at the squad. The hesitation, the poor performance, the freezing under specific stimuli. It was all a part of that protocol, a deep-cover psychological block to keep her dormant and non-threatening, unless specifically activated. Without the authorization code, she is a ghost. With it, the colonel's eyes flicked to Maya. She is a weapon that few can match. And, she added, her voice dropping slightly, she is my daughter. The aftermath was swift and decisive. The paperwork for Maya's dismissal was shredded, burned, and its ashes scattered. In its place were new orders, assigning her not as a graduate of the selection course, but as an advanced tactics instructor for it. She had been sent there not to pass, but to observe, to evaluate the course and its candidates from the inside. The social dynamics of the barracks shifted overnight. Armstrong and his crew fell into a stunned, cowed silence. The swagger was gone from A-Train's step, replaced by a cautious, wide-eyed respect. Jester and Grizz were seen in the evenings, not telling jokes at Maya's expense, but diligently practicing the reloading techniques and room entry tactics they had seen her execute. They began to study her, trying to deconstruct the flawless lethality they had witnessed. Cray himself looked like a man who had seen a ghost. His confidence shattered. The foundations of his black and white military world rocked to the core. One evening, a younger candidate, emboldened by curiosity, approached Maya as she cleaned her weapon. "Specialist, instructor," he stammered. Why did you let them treat you like that? Why didn't you just show them what you could do from the beginning?" Maya paused her work. She looked up, her sharp eyes meeting his. Her answer was simple, direct, and spoke volumes about the world she came from. "I wasn't cleared to," she said plainly, before returning to her task, leaving the young soldier to grapple with the profound implications of those 4 simple words. This story in its essence is a powerful reminder that the surface of things is rarely the full picture. We live in a world that encourages snap judgments. We label people based on first impressions, on their perceived weaknesses, or on how well they fit into the neat little boxes we create for them. Maya Rostova, in her guise as a failure, is a mirror to our own biases. She teaches us that true strength, true capability, often lies dormant beneath a quiet and unassuming exterior. It's a lesson in humility, a call to look deeper, to question our own assumptions before we write someone off. Think about your own life. How many times have you misjudged someone, only to be proven wrong later? How often do we dismiss the quiet ones, the ones who don't broadcast their strengths, in favor of those who are loudest and most confident? Maya's story urges us to practice a more profound empathy and a more patient observation. It reminds us that some of the most extraordinary people are the ones who have no need to prove it to anyone until the moment it truly matters. They operate on a different set of orders, a different timeline. The lesson here is not to be a secret super soldier, but to recognize the hidden potential in others and, perhaps more importantly, in ourselves. Sometimes, the skills we need are not meant for daily display. They are waiting for the right trigger phrase, the right moment, the right challenge to be unleashed. What do you think? Is it better to always show your full capabilities? Or is there a strategic power in holding something back? Have you ever had an experience where you completely misjudged a person's abilities? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories. I wish you all good health, clarity, and the wisdom to see beyond the surface. If you enjoyed this story and the lessons within it, Please consider subscribing to the channel for more content that makes you think. Until next time.